I never thought childhood could feel like a prison, but mine did. Some people grow up remembering warm kitchens filled with laughter, birthdays where candles dripped down onto cake, and mothers who shielded them from storms. I remember walls that held secrets, the sound of leather snapping against my skin, and the glare of a phone camera recording my humiliation. My mother didn't save me from the pain. She preserved it, like evidence, only not against the man who caused it, but against me. The first time my stepdad raised a belt to me, I was 12. I can still feel the sting if I close my eyes. It wasn't just pain, it was the realization that my life had shifted. I no longer had the kind of childhood that kids at school seem to take for granted. I had entered a new reality where obedience was demanded, mistakes were punishable, and my body became the canvas for his rage. But even before the belt, there were signs. Looking back, I can see them clearly now. The controlling questions. The harsh tone that made my stomach drop. The way my mom's smile dimmed when he walked into the room. He was charming to outsiders, funny, even. But behind our door, his footsteps carried tension, and his presence drained the air of safety. My mom wasn't always like that either. Before he came along, she used to sit beside me at night, brushing my hair back and whispering about how we'd be okay, just the two of us. She wasn't perfect, but she was mine, and I believed her. Then he arrived, and suddenly, I was no longer the center of her world. He was. I became the problem child, the nuisance, the obstacle in their perfect relationship. It started small. He'd scold me for leaving a dish in the sink. He'd tell me my voice was too loud when I laughed. He hated when I closed my bedroom door, so I lost even that tiny sliver of privacy. He controlled when I ate, when I spoke, even how I sat at the table. And whenever I protested, my mom's silence spoke louder than his words. She didn't back me. She didn't defend me. She looked at me as though I was the one disrupting peace. The belt came out after months of this. I had forgotten to fold laundry one afternoon. Something so trivial, just clothes stacked in a basket. But when he came home and saw it, his face twisted with rage. He told me to stand in the living room, in front of the window where anyone could have walked by. My heart raced as he unbuckled his belt slowly, deliberately, like he wanted me to hear each notch slide free. I begged, not with words, because I had learned words only made him angrier, but with wide eyes and trembling hands. And then it struck. The first lash burned through my skin, and the shock stole my breath. The second hit harder, and by the third, I could feel the welts rising. My mom stood in the doorway, frozen. For a moment, I thought she might step forward, stop him, do something. But she didn't. She only turned away. That silence from her cut deeper than the belt itself. Over time, those beatings became routine. He found reasons everywhere. A grade lower than an A, shoes left by the door. Even the way I sighed when I was exhausted. He wielded the belt like a weapon, but also like a ritual. And with each lash, I lost a piece of my childhood, a fragment of my trust in the world. But the worst wasn't the belt, it was the camera. The first time she recorded it, I didn't even notice at first. I was too focused on surviving, on trying not to scream too loudly because I knew that only fueled him further. When I finally lifted my eyes through tears, there she was, my own mother, holding up her phone, capturing the violence like it was proof of my failures. Proof of how bad I was. She played it back for me afterward, as if showing me the bruises in motion would somehow teach me to be better. I stared at the screen, watching myself flinch and crumble, my face twisted in pain, my body curling in on itself. I didn't see a bad kid. I saw a broken one. And yet she stood over me, pointing at the video, telling me this was my fault. That if I behaved, none of it would happen. I can't explain the betrayal I felt in that moment. It wasn't just that she didn't protect me, it was that she joined in. She documented my suffering and called it discipline. She rewrote the story so that I was the villain, and the man holding the belt was just teaching me a lesson. Nights after those beatings, I would lie in bed, my back raw and stinging, staring at the ceiling. I wondered what was wrong with me. Why I wasn't worth saving. Why my own mother, my protector, the person who once promised me we'd always be okay, chose to side with the man who hurt me instead of the child she gave birth to. The hardest part wasn't the pain. Pain fades, even if scars remain. The hardest part was the loneliness. The kind that creeps into your bones and whispers that you don't belong anywhere. That nobody will ever believe you. That if your own mother can turn her back on you, then everyone else will too. Still, somewhere inside me, a small flame refused to die. I didn't know it then, but that flame would become my lifeline, the reason I would eventually find the strength to fight back, to reclaim my story, and to tell it here, to you. Because I survived. And survival isn't pretty. It isn't neat. It's jagged, messy, and sometimes it feels impossible. But I'm living proof that even when the people you depend on most betray you in the worst way, you can still find a way forward. The belt left scars on my skin, but the camera left scars on my soul. My stepdad's anger came in waves, unpredictable and sharp, but my mother's betrayal was steady and constant. Every time she held up her phone, I felt myself disappear a little more. I wasn't her child anymore. I was an object lesson, a project in discipline, a warning to myself. She would replay the videos in the quiet after he finished. My body trembling, my eyes swollen, my voice hoarse from holding back screams. She would sit me down and press play, as if I were watching a movie about someone else. And she would narrate over it, telling me how my defiance caused his rage, how I should be ashamed of myself for making her husband lose control. She made me watch until I looked away, and when I did, she forced my chin back to the screen. There are things a child should never see, least of all themselves being destroyed. And yet, I saw it again and again, until I almost believed her. I almost believed I deserved it. School should have been an escape, but it wasn't. I carried the bruises like hidden maps across my body. I learned to move carefully, to avoid wincing when I sat down, to keep long sleeves on even in the heat of summer. Kids laughed about things that didn't matter. Teachers droned on about homework. And I sat there, hollowed out, wondering why no one could see me. Sometimes, I wanted them to notice. I wanted someone to pull me aside, ask the right question, peel back the mask I wore. But I was also terrified. What if they did ask? What if they called home, and it only got worse? The thought of my mom's eyes, cold, detached, almost proud when she pressed record, kept me silent. The recordings became her weapon outside the house too. If I tried to talk back, she'd threaten to show them to relatives. She'd say things like, "Do you want your grandmother to see how you behave?" I couldn't understand how she didn't see what was really on those tapes. It wasn't me misbehaving. It was me being brutalized. But she framed it so convincingly, even I doubted my own memory. Gaslighting, that's what I'd later learn it was called. But at the time, I just thought maybe she was right. Maybe I really was bad. Maybe I was the problem. Birthdays became another twisted stage. One year, after a particularly brutal beating, she made me sit at the table for cake. My cheeks still red, my eyes bloodshot. She angled the camera for photos, telling me to smile, to act normal. The belt marks on my arms burned under my sleeves, but the candles flickered anyway, mocking me with their light. I smiled in those pictures. A broken, forced smile. To anyone else, it might have looked like a family moment. To me, it felt like evidence of my captivity. I became an expert at pretending. Pretending I was fine. Pretending the bruises came from clumsiness. Pretending my family wasn't the battlefield it really was. But every night, I curled into myself, wondering if tomorrow would be worse. Wondering if I'd ever feel safe again. The abuse didn't always come with the belt. Sometimes it was words, sharp and cutting, slicing deeper than leather ever could. He called me names I can't repeat, each one designed to remind me I was worthless. And when he was done, she would chime in, reinforcing his insults with her silence or her laughter. That laughter, it haunted me. It meant she agreed. It meant I wasn't just fighting him, but her too. One evening, after I spilled a glass of water at dinner, he snapped so fast I barely saw it coming. The belt struck before I could breathe. My mom didn't just film that night. She laughed as she recorded. A sound I'll never forget. I tried to block it out, to focus on the pain in my body rather than the betrayal in her voice, but I couldn't. That laugh echoed louder than the crack of leather. It told me she enjoyed it. At school, a counselor once noticed I was quieter than usual. She asked if everything was okay at home. My heart pounded. This was my chance. But I looked at her, and all I could see was my mother's phone screen, my face twisted in pain. What if she didn't believe me? What if she showed my mom what I said? So I nodded and whispered that I was fine. And just like that, the moment passed. I lived in two worlds. On the outside, I was the quiet kid who did her work, smiled politely, and kept her head down. On the inside, I was screaming, trapped in a cage no one else could see. As the years went on, the abuse didn't stop, it escalated. The belt left deeper welts. The videos became longer. She upgraded her phone once, and I remember thinking it wasn't just for her own life, it was for capturing mine, my pain, in higher resolution. I started to plan ways out, though I didn't yet have the courage to act. Sometimes I imagined running away, disappearing into the night. Sometimes I thought about telling a teacher everything, laying it all bare. And sometimes, when the darkness inside me grew too heavy, I wondered if escape meant something more final. Those thoughts scared me, but they were real. When the people who are supposed to love you most make you feel worthless, your mind goes to dangerous places. And yet, through it all, that small flame inside me still flickered. I didn't know why. Maybe because a part of me refused to accept that this was all life had to offer. Maybe because I had dreams that lived beyond those walls, dreams of being free, of being loved without conditions, of not flinching at the sound of footsteps in the hall. One night, lying awake with my skin still raw from the belt, I made myself a promise. I whispered it into the darkness, barely audible even to myself, this will not be forever. I didn't know how or when, but I clung to that promise like a lifeline. The house I grew up in wasn't a home, it was a stage. Every corner held memories I wanted to erase, but my mother insisted on keeping them alive with her recordings. She became the director of my suffering, pressing record while he played the role of Punisher, and I became the unwilling actor in their twisted production. The beatings blurred together after a while. I couldn't tell one welt from another, one bruise from the next. But I could tell you every detail about her phone, the color of the case, the sound it made when she tapped the screen to record, even the way she held it up at an angle to make sure she got my face. That was important to her. Not just my body, not just the belt striking skin, but my face contorted in pain. She wanted to capture it all. Sometimes she'd watch the videos later when he wasn't around. She'd sit in her room with the door half closed, volume low, but I'd hear it anyway. The faint sounds of leather cracking, of me crying, of him yelling. And then her laughter. That quiet, satisfied laugh, like she was reviewing a highlight reel of her favorite show. I don't think I'll ever understand how a mother can do that to her child. When I looked at her, I didn't see my mom anymore. I saw someone else entirely. Someone who had chosen her partner over her child so completely that she erased me. She didn't just abandon me, she turned me into evidence against myself. The worst part was how she used the recordings as a leash. Whenever I thought about standing up for myself, she'd remind me she had proof of how bad I was. She threatened to show family, friends, even teachers if I embarrassed her. She said no one would side with me. And in my terrified, isolated mind, I believed her. After all, who would believe a kid over two adults who seemed perfectly fine in public? At gatherings, she'd act like nothing was wrong. She'd introduce me with a smile, fix my hair, adjust my shirt, and tell people how proud she was of me. I'd stand there, stiff, knowing that later that same night, she might be filming me on the floor while the belt struck again. That double life suffocated me. I grew quiet. Too quiet. Teachers wrote that I was shy, withdrawn, a good kid. They didn't see the storm raging beneath my silence. My friends stopped inviting me out because I always had an excuse. I couldn't risk coming home late, or leaving my homework unfinished, or doing anything that might trigger his temper. My world shrank to the size of that house, and within those walls, I was never safe. The physical pain was bad, but what broke me most were the words. After the beatings, when the red marks still throbbed and my chest still heaved, she'd sit me down for what she called the lesson. She'd play the video back and narrate every movement. See the way you rolled your eyes? That's why he snapped. See how you hesitated when he told you to stand still? That's disobedience. She twisted my every reflex into proof that I deserved what I got. I started to hate myself. Not just because of what they told me, but because I believed them. I believed I was unlovable, defective, impossible to care for. I believed that if even my mother could turn against me, no one else ever could love me either. At night, lying in bed, I thought about disappearing. Not just running away, but disappearing completely. The thought scared me, but it also felt like the only way out. When you're trapped that deep, hope feels like a cruel joke. And yet, somehow, a sliver of hope survived. I don't know where it came from. Maybe from the tiny memories of her before him, the mother who used to braid my hair, hum lullabies, and tell me I was her whole world. Maybe from the way my heart still beat stubbornly in my chest, refusing to give up. Or maybe it came from somewhere deeper, a place even they couldn't touch. One night, after a brutal beating over something as small as forgetting to close the fridge door, I lay awake, aching all over, staring at the ceiling. I whispered to myself again, like I had before, "This will not be forever." My voice was shaky, almost too soft to hear, but it was there. A promise to myself, fragile but alive. That promise became my secret weapon. I started to picture a future beyond them. I didn't know what it looked like exactly, but I imagined freedom. I imagined walking into a place where no one knew me, where I wasn't the bad kid, where there were no belts, no cameras, no cruel laughter. Just peace. It was those small daydreams that kept me from breaking completely. Still, the present was unbearable. The beatings grew worse. The threats sharper. And the videos piled up, each one a reminder of how trapped I was. She even started saving them in folders, organizing them like family albums. She called it accountability, but to me, it was a gallery of my suffering. The turning point came the night she showed one of the videos to my grandmother. I'll never forget it. We were visiting her house, and my mom pulled out her phone casually, almost like she was showing vacation photos. And there it was, me on the floor, curled up, crying, the belt striking again and again. My grandmother gasped, horrified. For a split second, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe someone would finally save me. But my mom laughed it off, telling her it was just discipline, that I had been out of control. My grandmother didn't push further. She just shook her head and said I needed to learn. That moment crushed something inside me. If even that couldn't make someone step in, who would? But it also lit something new. A strange, burning anger. Not at myself this time, but at them. For the first time, I started to realize the problem wasn't me. It was them. Their cruelty. Their betrayal. Their refusal to see me as a child in need of love. That realization was terrifying and liberating all at once. The night everything came to a head wasn't the first time he beat me, and it wasn't the first time she recorded. But it was the night when something inside me finally snapped. It started with something so small it feels absurd even now. A missing homework assignment. I had tucked it into my folder, sure I had brought it home, but when I opened my bag at the kitchen table, it wasn't there. I panicked. I knew what would happen if he noticed. I searched everywhere, under the couch, between cushions, in the trash. But the paper was gone. When he came home and my mother mentioned it casually, his eyes locked on me like a predator spotting prey. I froze. My heart pounded, my mouth dry. He didn't yell at first. He just asked where it was. I stammered, trying to explain, but he wasn't listening. He unbuckled his belt slowly, deliberately, like he wanted me to feel the dread before the pain. And then she did something that made my stomach drop even lower. She reached for her phone. The familiar sound of the camera app opening cut through the air like a knife. She angled it toward me, almost eager, like she had been waiting for this moment. The first strike knocked the wind out of me. I stumbled back, clutching my arm, but he didn't stop. The belt came down again and again, across my back, my legs, my arms. I fell to the floor, curling in on myself, but the blows kept coming. Through the haze of pain, I lifted my head just enough to see her. And there she was, holding the phone steady, her eyes focused not on me, not on her child, but on the screen. That image burned into me deeper than the welts. My stepdad's rage was almost predictable by then. But my mother's cold detachment, that was the true betrayal. The belt cracked against my shoulder, and I cried out, unable to hold it in. She zoomed in closer. I saw her thumb pinch the screen. She was making sure she captured every detail. My humiliation, my pain, my tears. It wasn't discipline anymore. It was entertainment. I don't know how long it lasted. Time blurred. Each strike melted into the next. By the time he stopped, I was shaking, gasping for breath, my body covered in angry red marks. My skin throbbed everywhere, but the worst pain came when she crouched down beside me and shoved the phone in my face. "Look," she said, as if I needed reminding. The video replayed, my cries echoing from the tiny speaker. I tried to turn away, but she grabbed my chin and forced me to look. "This is who you are," she told me. Something inside me broke in that moment. But not the way she wanted. She thought she was crushing me into obedience, into silence. Instead, she awakened something else. Anger. A raw, burning fury that said, "Enough." I didn't fight back that night. My body was too weak, my spirit too exhausted. But inside, I started planning. Not how to survive the next beating, but how to get out. For good. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. The pain from that night lingered. Every movement hurt. Sitting in class felt like torture. Walking down the hall was agony. But I kept going. I kept quiet. I let them think they had broken me. All the while, I was building my resolve. At night, I lay awake replaying everything in my mind. The crack of the belt. The coldness in her eyes. The video playing back my cries. And each time, I whispered the same words to myself, "This will not be forever." Only this time, I wasn't just hoping. I was deciding. I began paying closer attention to the world outside my house. To the way teachers spoke. To the posters on the walls about speaking up. To the small cracks of kindness people showed me, smiles, gentle words, fleeting moments that reminded me not everyone was like them. One afternoon, after gym class, I noticed a bruise peeking out from under my sleeve. A classmate asked what happened. I laughed it off, said I bumped into something, but the look in her eyes lingered. She didn't believe me. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. It gave me a spark of courage. What if someone did believe me? The thought grew louder with each passing day. The more I thought about the videos, the more I realized they weren't evidence of my failure, they were evidence of theirs. Proof of the cruelty I endured. Proof that I wasn't making it up. The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother thought those recordings made her strong. But one day, I would realize they could make me free. The breaking point wasn't a single moment. It was 1,000 little cracks that finally shattered. The way my stepdad's eyes lit up with anger like it was a game. The way my mother replayed my pain like a song she never tired of. The way they made me feel invisible in a house where I should have been loved. I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. Silence was killing me. The day I finally spoke up didn't start any differently from the others. My stepdad left early for work, my mother made breakfast, and I sat at the table with my body stiff and aching from bruises no one else could see. But inside, I was different. That night when they filmed me had changed everything. I wasn't their silent victim anymore. I was someone planning an escape. I had been rehearsing the words in my head for weeks. Who to trust. How to say it without falling apart. But fear clung to me like a second skin. What if no one believed me? What if they told my mom what I said? What if I made everything worse? Still, I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I couldn't keep pretending. That afternoon, I stayed behind after class. My teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, noticed me lingering by my desk, fiddling with my sleeves. She asked if I was okay. That was all it took. A simple question. The dam inside me cracked. I didn't tell her everything right away. Just that things at home weren't safe. That I was scared. That I didn't want to go back. My voice shook, my eyes burned, but I forced the words out. And for the first time in my life, an adult didn't look away. She leaned closer, her voice steady, and said, "I believe you." Those 3 words felt like oxygen. Like sunlight breaking through a locked window. From there, things moved quickly. Too quickly for me to process. The school called Child Protective Services. An officer came. Questions were asked. Papers were signed. My mother was furious. She stormed into the office, her voice sharp and cold, calling me a liar, a drama queen, an ungrateful child. My stepdad stood behind her, silent but seething, his fists clenched. And in that chaos, I realized something important: they weren't in control anymore. The authorities asked about proof, and for the first time, I had it. I told them about the videos. About the way she recorded me. At first, she denied it, but when they checked her phone, the truth stared back at them in pixelated cruelty. My screams, my bruises, my stepdad's belt. Everything was there. Watching their faces as the evidence played was like watching a mask shatter. My mother's excuses crumbled. My stepdad's silence deepened. For once, it wasn't my word against theirs. It was reality, undeniable and raw. That night, I didn't go home. I was placed in temporary care, with strangers who offered me a bed, food, and something I hadn't felt in years: safety. I lay awake in the quiet, the echoes of that video replaying in my mind, but this time they didn't crush me. This time, they reminded me I had survived. The hardest part wasn't leaving my stepdad. It wasn't even leaving the house that had been a prison. The hardest part was accepting that my own mother had chosen him over me. She didn't hold me as they took me away. She didn't whisper that she was sorry. She didn't fight for me. She just watched, arms crossed, lips pressed tight, eyes full of anger, not at him, but at me. And that's when the truth sank in: sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings, therapy sessions, and long talks with social workers. I learned words like resilience and trauma, words that felt too big for a kid like me, but also fit too perfectly. I began to understand that what happened to me wasn't my fault. That I wasn't broken, I was surviving. It wasn't easy. Nights were the hardest. The memories crept in when the world was quiet, and I'd curl under the blanket, shaking, remembering the belt, the phone, the laughter. But slowly, I also began to remember other things. The kindness of my teacher. The steady voice of the social worker. The warm meal from the foster family who didn't look at me like a burden. Piece by piece, I started to rebuild. Looking back now, I realize that the moment my mother filmed me wasn't just the lowest point of my life. It was also the turning point. Because in trying to humiliate me, she gave me the very thing that set me free, proof. And in choosing him over me, she unknowingly gave me clarity. I didn't need her love to survive. I needed my own strength. Today, when I tell this story, people ask how I made it through. The truth is, I don't always know. Some days, survival was nothing more than breathing in and out, waiting for tomorrow. But other days, it was the fire in me that whispered, "This will not be forever." And it wasn't. I still carry the scars. Not all of them are visible. But I also carry something stronger, the knowledge that I fought my way out of a darkness that was never mine to carry. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the family you're born into isn't always the family that saves you. Sometimes, survival means walking away, even when it breaks your heart. Sometimes, strength means telling your story, even when your voice shakes. I reported my stepfather's abuse. My mother disowned me for causing drama. And for the first time in my life, I'm proud of the drama I caused, because it saved me.